It was a quiet morning in the small town of Oakwood, a place where everyone knew everyone's name. The streets were calm, and the sun shone brightly through the trees. People were starting their day, some walking to work, others enjoying their coffee at the local cafe. Among the crowd, one person seemed to move through the world a little differently. Her name was Emily Thompson, and today, she was just like any other person walking down Main Street. She was dressed in simple clothes, her long brown hair tied up in a loose ponytail, and beside her, her guide dog, Max, walked with calm and steady steps. To the people around her, Emily didn't stand out. She was just another blind woman, going about her daily routine, quietly navigating the world with her loyal dog by her side. But if anyone had paid closer attention, they would have noticed something unusual. Max, her guide dog, wasn't just an ordinary dog. He was special. And Emily? Well, she was not just another blind woman. She had a secret. A secret that, if revealed, would turn everything upside down. As Emily walked, people occasionally glanced at her, some out of curiosity, others out of sympathy. She couldn't see them, of course, but she could feel their eyes on her. She had grown used to it, this feeling of being looked at. Some people stared out of pity, thinking of her as someone who needed help. Others were more curious, wondering how she managed to live without being able to see the world around her. But Emily didn't mind. She didn't need anyone's pity or curiosity. She had been blind since she was born, and she had learned how to live her life without the need for anyone to feel sorry for her. She didn't let her blindness define who she was. Max, her guide dog, had been with her for years now. He had been trained to help her navigate the world, to keep her safe, and to guide her through even the busiest streets. He was more than just a dog, he was her best friend, her protector. And he was more than capable of handling anything that came their way. As they walked down Main Street, Emily's thoughts drifted to the conversation she had with her mother earlier that morning. Her mother had always worried about her, especially when she went out alone. She had asked Emily to be careful and to stay close to the familiar places she knew well. But Emily had insisted. She didn't want to live her life in fear. "Don't worry, Mom," she had said, trying to calm her mother's nerves. "I'll be fine. I have Max, and he's all I need." But today, something felt different. Emily couldn't put her finger on it, but she felt like something was going to happen. Maybe it was just the weight of the day, or maybe it was because she was in a new part of town, a place she didn't visit often. Either way, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. As they continued down the street, a group of loud voices caught her attention. It wasn't the usual noise of people going about their day, it was something else, something that sent a chill down her spine. Emily slowed her pace, trying to make out what was happening. Max's ears perked up, his body stiffening beside her. Emily knew that when Max acted this way, something wasn't right. She reached down and gently patted his head, trying to calm him. But Max was already alert, his sharp instincts picking up on something Emily couldn't yet see. A group of bikers, all dressed in black leather jackets and wearing dark sunglasses, were gathered near the corner. They were talking and laughing loudly, their voices full of bravado. Emily could hear the sounds of their motorcycles idling nearby, the engines rumbling with power. She had heard of these bikers before. They weren't from Oakwood. They were known for causing trouble in small towns, for pushing people around and making others feel unsafe. Emily had never encountered them before, but she had heard enough stories to know they were not the kind of people you wanted to mess with. As they spotted her walking down the street, their laughter grew louder. Emily's instincts told her to be cautious, but she didn't want to let them see that she was nervous. She had learned long ago to keep her head held high, no matter what. One of the bikers, a tall man with a thick beard and a scar running down his cheek, stepped forward. "Hey there, lady," he called out. "Looks like you're lost. Need some help?" Emily didn't respond right away. She could feel Max standing tall beside her, ready to protect her if needed. But she didn't want to start a confrontation. She wasn't afraid of these men, but she knew that sometimes it was best to avoid trouble when you could. "I'm fine, thank you," Emily said, her voice steady but firm. "I'm just on my way." But the biker wasn't satisfied with that. He took a step closer, his boots clicking loudly against the pavement. "You sure you're okay? You don't look like you're doing too well, walking around blind like that. You must need some help." Emily could feel his eyes on her, his gaze full of judgment. She hated how people often treated her like she was helpless. She didn't need their help. Not then, not ever. "I told you, I'm fine," Emily said, her voice sharp this time. But the biker wasn't listening. He reached out and grabbed Max's leash, pulling it roughly. "I think your dog needs a lesson in obedience," he sneered, tugging at the leash as if he had the right to control Max. Max growled low in his throat, sensing the danger. Emily's heart raced as she tried to pull the leash back. "Let go of him," she shouted, her voice trembling with anger. The biker just laughed. "What's the blind girl gonna do? You think your dog can stop me?" But Emily wasn't about to let him get away with this. Max may have been a guide dog, but he was no ordinary dog. He was trained for more than just guiding. He was smart, strong, and ready to protect Emily at any cost. In that moment, Emily's secret, the one she had kept hidden for so long, began to surface. What the bikers didn't know was that Max wasn't just any guide dog. He had a history. A history that could change everything. Emily had been walking down the street for a while, with Max at her side, when she began to feel the tension in the air. It wasn't the usual calmness she'd grown used to in Oakwood. Today felt different. The bikers standing on the corner weren't just making noise for fun. Their eyes followed her every step, and their laughter was too loud, too mocking. She knew they weren't just passing the time. They had a target in mind. Emily had been blind all her life. She was used to people looking at her differently, sometimes with pity, sometimes with curiosity. She had learned long ago to ignore the stares and whispers. But what she wasn't used to, and what she certainly didn't expect, was to be treated this way by complete strangers. The bikers had been laughing at her, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. It was the kind of laugh that made you feel small, like you didn't belong. And Emily wasn't one to let that slide. As she walked past them, she could hear the sounds of their boots tapping on the ground, their laughter still ringing in the air. Emily kept her focus straight ahead, knowing that the more she reacted, the more they'd try to get under her skin. But Max, her guide dog, was growing more tense with each passing moment. She could feel the slight shift in his body language. He was alert, aware of the biker's every move, and ready to protect her if need be. Emily trusted Max more than anyone else. He had been her guide, her protector, and her friend for years. But today, even Max seemed to sense something wasn't right. One of the bikers, a man with a rough face and a deep scar across his cheek, took a step forward. Emily could feel his presence in the air, his heavy footsteps closing the distance between them. She could hear the others laugh and shout in the background, egging him on. "Hey, blind lady," the man called out, his voice dripping with mockery. "You need some help walking around, or are you just lost in your own world?" Emily's grip tightened on Max's leash, but she kept walking. She wasn't going to let this man, or anyone else, make her feel small. She had faced harder things in life than some cruel biker. Still, she couldn't help but feel a knot in her stomach. Why did they have to make her life so difficult? Max stopped walking, his ears flicking toward the bikers. Emily felt the change in his stance immediately. He was preparing for something. His muscles were tight, his body alert. Emily could sense that this wasn't just a casual encounter. Max didn't react like this unless something was wrong. She stopped, too, and paused for a moment. The man stepped closer. "What's the matter? You can't hear me, huh?" he said with a sarcastic laugh. "Too bad your dog doesn't have ears." Emily could hear the others snicker, their voices growing louder. The bikers were enjoying this, taking pleasure in teasing someone who couldn't fight back. But Emily wasn't a weak target. She had learned long ago to stand her ground, no matter what. "I told you I'm fine," Emily said, her voice calm but firm. She wasn't going to let them push her around. She had faced worse before, people who underestimated her, who looked at her and thought she couldn't do anything. But Emily had always proven them wrong. The biker didn't take her response well. He reached out and grabbed the leash that held Max, yanking it forcefully. Max growled, a low, warning sound that made the air around them shift. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She could feel Max's strength, the tension in his body. He was ready to protect her. "Let go of him," Emily shouted, her voice stronger this time. She took a step forward, her hands stretching out toward the leash, trying to regain control. But the biker didn't let go. "What's your dog going to do about it?" the man sneered, his grip tightening on Max's leash. "Is he going to bite me?" "I don't think so." Emily could feel the anger rising in her chest. She wanted to do more than shout at him. She wanted to show him that she wasn't someone he could bully. But she couldn't act rashly, not with Max in danger. She had to stay calm, keep her composure. Max would handle this in his own way. "Let him go," Emily repeated, her voice growing more forceful. She knew that if the man didn't release the leash, things were about to get worse. She wasn't sure if she could do much to stop him, but she trusted Max to know what to do next. The biker just laughed again, tugging at the leash, trying to assert his control over her. He wasn't just mocking her blindness anymore. Now, he was treating Max like a toy, something he could control. Emily's heart raced, and her mind raced faster. She couldn't let this go on any longer. Max's growl grew louder, fiercer. Emily could feel him pulling back, fighting against the biker's hold. And then, without warning, Max lunged forward. It wasn't a random attack. Max wasn't just reacting in anger. This was calculated, controlled. He had been trained for moments like this. His body surged with strength as he pulled away from the biker's grip and stepped between Emily and the man. His eyes were locked onto the biker, his body tense, ready to act. The man stumbled back in surprise, his grip finally loosening on the leash. Max stood firm, his body rigid with purpose. The other bikers fell silent for a moment, their mocking laughter fading as they saw the situation shift. Emily could feel the tension in the air. It wasn't just the bikers who had underestimated her. They had underestimated Max, too. She had always known how capable he was, how much strength and skill he carried beneath his calm exterior. But now, the bikers were beginning to see it as well. For a moment, everything was still. The bikers exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of how to respond. Emily could hear their nervous shuffling, the shuffle of boots against the pavement. But she didn't move. She couldn't let them see any sign of fear. Not now. Not when she had the upper hand. The man who had grabbed Max looked from the dog to Emily, his face now more serious. The smugness was gone, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. "What's your dog, some kind of trained attack dog or something?" he asked, his voice now lacking the arrogance it had before. Emily didn't answer right away. She could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She wasn't just some blind woman walking down the street anymore. She wasn't the weak target they had thought she was. They were about to learn the truth. Max was more than just a guide dog. He had a history. A powerful, dangerous history that none of them could have ever imagined. But before Emily could respond, Max gave a low growl, a warning that made everyone step back. The bikers, who had been so bold just moments ago, now looked unsure. They had crossed a line, and now they could see the power they were up against. But the question remained, how far would they push things? Would they learn their lesson, or was this just the beginning? The bikers, now realizing that Max wasn't just any dog, seemed a little hesitant, but their aggression didn't fade. They were still there, standing in a group, eyes fixed on Emily and her dog. The air was thick with tension, and the sound of their engines rumbling in the background seemed louder than ever. Emily could feel it, their eyes on her, their attempts to provoke her. But she didn't give them the satisfaction of reacting. She stayed calm, her grip firm on Max's harness, but her body relaxed. She knew better than to let her emotions take over. "What's wrong, lady? Your dog's not going to bite, is he?" One of the bikers called out with a grin, trying to get a rise out of her. Emily didn't answer him right away. She could feel the nervous energy in the air, the way the bikers shifted their weight and muttered under their breath. They thought they had the upper hand, but they didn't know what they were dealing with. Max wasn't just a dog to her, he was her partner, her protector. He had always been there when she needed him, guiding her through every obstacle. And today, he wasn't about to let these bikers push them around. Emily's heart beat steadily in her chest, calm in the face of what was going on. She had dealt with people who underestimated her before. People who looked at her blindness and saw weakness. People who assumed that because she couldn't see, she couldn't fight back. But she had learned to be patient. She knew that sometimes, the best response was to wait, to stay calm and let the other person make the first move. Max's ears flicked as one of the bikers took a step closer. Emily could feel the tension in his body, the way he shifted slightly, his muscles taut. Max was ready. She could sense it. He wasn't just waiting for a command, he was waiting for the right moment. Emily trusted him completely. She knew that Max was always thinking, always planning ahead. And right now, he was the calm in the storm. The bikers weren't done, though. They moved closer, trying to crowd around her. Their voices got louder, their words sharper. They wanted to provoke a reaction, to make her angry. But Emily stayed still. She didn't flinch or move. She kept her focus ahead, her breathing steady. "Look at her," one of them sneered. "She doesn't even know where she's going." The others chuckled, but their laughter had a nervous edge to it now. Emily's calmness was starting to make them uncomfortable. They were used to people reacting, to getting a rise out of others. But Emily wasn't like that. She wasn't just a blind woman with a dog. She was something more. Max's eyes never left the bikers. He was fully aware of each one of them, watching their every move. His body remained still, but every muscle was ready to move at a moment's notice. Emily could feel his alertness, the way his body shifted slightly as each biker took another step toward her. She could feel him weighing the situation, calculating the best moment to act. She didn't know exactly what was going through his mind, but she didn't need to. She trusted him. The tension grew thicker as the bikers closed in. One of them, the one who had grabbed Max's leash earlier, took another step forward. His smirk was gone now, replaced by a more serious expression. He could see the way Max stood, poised and alert, and he didn't like it. But he wasn't going to back down just yet. "What's your dog gonna do?" he asked, his voice low, almost a challenge. "You can't see what's happening, but he can. I wonder what he's gonna do when we get closer." Emily didn't answer him. She could feel Max's body tense, his muscles coiling, but she stayed calm. She knew Max wouldn't act unless it was necessary. She could feel the way he was reading the situation, waiting for the right moment. He wasn't just a dog. He had been trained for moments like this. He knew when to stay still, and he knew when to protect. The biker was getting closer now, his steps slow and deliberate. Max's growl grew louder, low and threatening. Emily could feel the power in Max's stance, the strength in his body, but she still didn't speak. She trusted him. She knew that when the time was right, Max would act. And until then, she would wait. "Hey, lady," another biker called out, his voice louder now. "You really think that dog's gonna protect you? You're just another blind woman on the street. You don't know who you're dealing with." Emily didn't flinch. She felt the weight of the words, but she didn't let them affect her. She had heard worse. She had faced worse. The bikers thought they were in control, but they didn't know what Max was capable of. They didn't know what kind of bond the two of them shared. Max's growl deepened, vibrating through the leash. Emily could feel the tension in his body, and she knew that it wouldn't take much for him to act. The bikers could feel it too. They could see the way Max stood, unwavering, his body coiled and ready to move. And even though they were still laughing, their laughter had a nervous edge now. They were no longer sure of themselves. "All right, enough," the biker who had grabbed the leash earlier said, his voice a little less sure now. "We were just having some fun. No need to get all worked up." But Emily could tell that it wasn't over yet. The bikers might back off now, but they were still sizing her up. They hadn't given up completely. And as much as they might pretend to back off, Emily knew that they were still trying to figure out what to do next. Max stayed calm, his eyes fixed on the bikers, his body ready. Emily could feel his strength, his readiness, and she knew that he was waiting for them to make a mistake. She wasn't worried about what would happen next. She wasn't worried because she had Max by her side. And Max wasn't just any dog. He was more than that. He was her protector, her partner, and he wasn't about to let anyone hurt her. The bikers took a few steps back, their smiles replaced by uncertain looks. They were still unsure of what to do. They had thought they could intimidate her, but now they were beginning to realize that Emily wasn't someone to mess with. And neither was Max. The atmosphere was still tense, but now, it was clear that the bikers weren't as confident as they had been at the start. The more they watched Max, the more they understood that they had underestimated both him and Emily. The small revelations were starting to sink in. This wasn't just a woman and her dog. This was something much more powerful than they had ever imagined. And if they made the wrong move, they would find out just how strong Emily and Max really were. The bikers, now closing in on Jenna and Duke, seemed more certain than ever. They thought they had her cornered. The situation was building to a breaking point. Jenna remained calm, not showing any sign of fear, but every instinct in her was alert. She knew what was about to happen, and she was prepared. Her grip on Duke's harness tightened, but she stayed still, letting the bikers come closer, waiting for the moment when everything would change. One of the bikers, the largest of the group, walked up to Jenna with a smug grin on his face. His thick, leather jacket creaked as he moved, his hands on his hips, looking down at her and Duke. "What's wrong, lady? Your dog doesn't seem so tough," he sneered, his voice dripping with mockery. Jenna didn't respond, but her face remained calm. She could feel Duke's muscles tense beside her, his body silently reacting to the threats around them. He was ready. The biker's grin grew wider as he took a step closer to Jenna, standing just a little too close for comfort. He leaned in, as if to intimidate her further. "You should have just walked away," he growled. "But now you've made a mistake." At that moment, the air shifted. Duke's ears pricked up. Jenna could feel him grow even more focused. Something inside her told her that now was the time. She had never needed to give a command, Duke had always known when to act. And now, he was ready. Without warning, Duke leaped into action. The powerful canine moved so fast, it was as though he had been shot from a cannon. He shot forward with a force that knocked the biker off his feet, sending him crashing to the ground. The biker hit the pavement hard, and his helmet skidded a few feet away. The sound of his fall echoed across the parking lot, and the other bikers froze in shock, eyes wide with disbelief. Duke stood over the fallen biker, his stance steady and protective, a low growl rumbling in his throat. His sharp eyes locked onto the other bikers, warning them not to make a move. The bikers stared, mouths agape, unable to process what had just happened. Jenna took a deep breath and stepped forward, her voice calm but strong. "You picked the wrong person to mess with today," she said, her words carrying weight. The bikers could only stare at her in stunned silence, realizing just how wrong they were. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The tension that had been building up evaporated as the bikers realized they had underestimated Jenna and her guide dog. They thought they were dealing with an easy target, a blind woman who could be easily pushed around. But they couldn't have been more wrong. Jenna wasn't just any blind woman. She was someone who had trained and worked with Duke for years, and together, they were a team. As the bikers looked at each other, unsure of what to do next, they began to take a few steps back. They had been so sure of themselves, so confident that their size and strength would intimidate Jenna into submission. But now, the reality was clear. They were facing something far more formidable than they had expected. Jenna smiled softly, the sense of calm still in her voice. "Duke is more than just a guide dog. He's a hero, trained to protect, trained to fight when necessary." The bikers continued to retreat, slowly backing away from Jenna and Duke, their eyes still wide with shock. They were no longer laughing or mocking her. They were realizing that they had misjudged her, misjudged Duke, and misjudged the situation entirely. But Jenna wasn't done. She knew this moment wasn't just about defending herself. It was about showing these bikers that they couldn't get away with treating people like her with disrespect. She wanted to make sure they understood the lesson fully. "You might think you can push people around because you've got strength," Jenna continued, her voice steady. "But strength isn't just about size. It's about courage, about the will to stand up for what's right. Duke here, he's been through more than most people could ever imagine. He's a warrior in every sense of the word." The bikers were still reeling from the shock of what had just happened. One of them, the biker who had been the most vocal, tried to recover his confidence. He stood up slowly, brushing dirt off his leather jacket, trying to act like nothing had happened. All right," he muttered, his voice a little shakier than before. "We didn't mean no harm. Just having a little fun." But Jenna wasn't buying it. She could see the fear in their eyes, and she wasn't going to let them get away with it. She had seen people like this before, people who thought they could bully others just because they didn't understand them. She wasn't going to let them think they could walk away without learning something today. "Your fun," Jenna said firmly, "comes at the expense of others. But not today. Not with me." Max, her guide dog, stood tall, his body still positioned between Jenna and the bikers. His eyes were calm now, but his alertness was clear. He was ready for whatever came next. His job wasn't just to guide Jenna through the world, it was to protect her when she needed it most. And right now, Max was making sure no one took advantage of her. The bikers didn't say anything else. They were finally realizing the weight of what had just happened. They had been wrong to underestimate Jenna and Max, and they had been wrong to think they could intimidate her. They had learned their lesson the hard way. Without another word, the group of bikers turned and began to walk away, their heads lowered, their steps hesitant. They had been humbled, their bravado shattered. And as they walked off, they could feel the weight of the lesson Jenna had just taught them hanging in the air. Jenna stood still, her hand resting gently on Max's back. She didn't need to say anything more. The bikers had learned what they needed to know. They had learned that underestimating someone because of their disability, or any other reason, was a mistake they would never forget. As the bikers disappeared into the distance, Jenna and Max remained where they were, standing tall, as if nothing had ever happened. They were calm, confident, and united. They had faced the challenge and come out victorious. And in that moment, Jenna felt a sense of pride in herself, in Max, and in the lesson they had taught the bikers that day. Sometimes, the greatest strength comes not from physical power, but from the quiet confidence of knowing who you are and what you're capable of. And Jenna and Max, in their calm and unwavering presence, had shown exactly that. As the bikers began to scramble to their feet, trying to regain their balance and confidence, Jenna remained calm, standing tall. She didn't need to say a word. She didn't need an apology. She knew what she had done was right, and that was enough. Duke, her loyal guide dog, stood by her side, just as calm and steady as she was. He had done exactly what he was trained to do, and now the danger had passed. The bikers, still reeling from the shock of what had just happened, slowly started to gather themselves. One of them, the largest biker who had tried to intimidate Jenna earlier, wiped his hand across his face, a look of confusion and frustration in his eyes. He glanced at his friends, who were all equally stunned, unsure of what to do next. They had all thought it would be easy. They had thought they could mess with a blind woman, make fun of her, and get away with it. But they had underestimated her. They had underestimated Duke. And now, they were paying the price. Jenna didn't let her gaze fall on them for long. She had already made her point, and she wasn't going to waste any more time with people who had no respect for others. She had faced the bikers, and she had shown them what she was made of. Now it was time to move on. She had more important things to do. The sound of sirens in the distance reached her ears, and within moments, 2 police cars pulled into the parking lot. The officers stepped out quickly, taking in the scene before them. They saw the bikers, who were still standing awkwardly, looking as if they didn't know whether to leave or to try and fight back. But they didn't have the chance to make another move. Jenna didn't need to say anything to the officers. They already knew what had happened. They had seen it all from the moment they arrived. The bikers had crossed the line, and now they would have to face the consequences. The officers walked up to the group of bikers, their expression serious. "All right, gentlemen," one of the officers said, his voice firm. "You need to come with us." The bikers hesitated, but they knew better than to argue with the police. One by one, they were escorted to the police cars, their heads down, their faces showing the embarrassment and shame that they were finally beginning to feel. They had thought they were tough. They had thought they could intimidate someone like Jenna, just because she was blind. But now, they were the ones being led away in handcuffs. As the bikers were driven off, Jenna stood there, watching them go. She didn't feel a sense of victory, not in the way they might expect. To her, it wasn't about seeing them punished. It was about standing up for herself, standing up for what was right, and showing them that their behavior wouldn't be tolerated. That was the real victory. She turned to Duke, reaching down to pat his head. "Good boy," she whispered, her voice full of gratitude and pride. Duke wagged his tail, as if he understood that the job was done, that the threat had passed, and that his human was safe once again. The officers walked over to Jenna, one of them giving her a nod of approval. "You handled yourself well," he said, his tone respectful. "And your dog, too. He's one amazing animal." Jenna smiled softly, her pride in Duke shining through. "He's been through a lot. We've been through a lot together." The other officer, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. "You know," he said, "we don't often see people stand up like that, especially not in the face of something like this. You didn't let them push you around." Jenna shrugged, her calm demeanor never wavering. "I wasn't going to let them. I don't let anyone push me around. She paused, her expression becoming more serious. But I also know it's important to show people that it's not okay to treat others like that. We all deserve respect, no matter who we are. The officers nodded, clearly impressed. They had seen many people react to situations like this with fear, with anger, or even with violence. But Jenna had handled it with a quiet strength, a strength that spoke volumes without needing to shout. "You've got a lot of courage," one of the officers said. "It's not easy to stand up to people like that." Jenna looked down at Duke, her fingers running gently over his fur. "I've had to learn courage," she said quietly. "It's not something that comes easy when you've been through what I've been through. But it's something I've had to find, for myself and for him." The officers stood there for a moment, acknowledging the quiet power of Jenna's words. Then, without saying anything else, they turned and left the parking lot. Jenna and Duke were alone again, just as they had been before. But things were different now. As Jenna began to walk away, heading back to her car, she could feel the eyes of the people around her. They had all witnessed what had happened, and now they knew who Jenna really was. They knew that she wasn't just a blind woman with a dog. She was someone who had strength, someone who wasn't afraid to stand up for herself and for what was right. She had proven that today, in a way that no one would ever forget. Jenna felt a sense of peace settle over her as she walked. She didn't need to look back at the bikers, didn't need to hear their apologies or hear them beg for forgiveness. She had already made her point. She had already reclaimed her dignity. The justice had been served, not just by the police, but by the quiet courage and determination that Jenna had shown. And as for Duke, he trotted happily by her side, his tail wagging as they left the parking lot together. He didn't need any recognition. He had done his job, and he had done it well. That was all that mattered to him. The lesson was clear. No one should ever underestimate someone based on their appearance or circumstances. Everyone, no matter their situation, had a strength within them that could surprise the world. Jenna and Duke had proven that, and no one would forget it.